I've known Nathan for almost 6 years now. We met in college. He was the loud, charming guy everyone noticed instantly, and I was the quiet one sitting in the back of the lecture hall hoping no one would. Somehow, despite our differences, we clicked. He'd joke that he adopted me, called me his chill buddy, and dragged me into his chaotic world without ever realizing how much I wanted to stay there. Nathan was everything I wasn't. Confident, athletic, straight. At least, that's how he always presented himself. He was the kind of guy who always had some girl texting him, someone giggling next to him at a party, someone clinging to his arm like he belonged to them. And yet, he always made time for me. Whether it was study sessions, late-night video game marathons, or impromptu drives with no destination, he made me feel seen. I told myself over and over that what I felt wasn't real, that I was reading too much into his closeness, his hugs, that lingered just a little too long, the way he'd sometimes stare at me when he thought I wasn't looking. But deep down, I knew. I knew that my feelings for Nathan went beyond friendship, and I also knew I could never say it out loud. After graduation, we didn't drift like most people do. If anything, we got closer. We both still lived in the city, hit the gym together a couple times a week, kept our routines synced up. It became a comfortable rhythm, unspoken, consistent, safe, until that day. It was a Thursday. We had just finished a brutal leg day, and I was wiping sweat from my face when he turned to me and said, totally casually, "Hey, you want to hit the sauna for a bit?" Just like that. I blinked. "The sauna?" "Yeah," he said, grinning. "New one at the gym's open now. Helps with soreness and recovery and all that." I hesitated. Not because I was shy about sweating next to him. We'd changed in front of each other 100 times. It was just something about the way he asked, the way he was looking at me. I can't explain it, but the air between us felt heavier than usual. Still, I didn't let any of that show. I just shrugged, tossed my towel over my shoulder, and nodded. Sure, why not? I told myself it was nothing. Just two friends, sweating it out in a sauna. But something about the way he looked at me that day, it felt different. Like he knew something I didn't. Like we were both standing on the edge of something, and neither of us wanted to be the one to jump first. The gym was buzzing with the usual end-of-day energy, grunts, clanging weights, thudding music that made conversation. A little harder than usual. Nathan and I moved through our routine like clockwork, trading sets and spotting each other like we always did. It should have felt familiar, safe, but it didn't. Today, everything felt amplified. I was on the bench, pushing through the last few reps of a heavier set than usual, when I felt Nathan's hands under the bar, hovering just in case I failed. His voice was low, close to my ear. "Come on, Luke. You got this." His hand brushed my shoulder, steadying me, encouraging me. Nothing new. But my body reacted like it was the first time. I pushed the bar up with a grunt, more from adrenaline, then strength, and sat up, trying to hide the flush in my cheeks. "You've been hitting your protein or something?" he teased, giving my shoulder a playful squeeze. "You're lifting like a beast today." "Yeah. Or maybe your pep talks are just working," I said, trying to keep my voice level, my smile casual. He laughed and moved behind me again as I set up for another set. This time, as I adjusted my grip, I felt his hand on the small of my back. "Straighten up. You're arching a little." That touch, brief, firm, and totally normal in gym culture, sent a wave of heat up my spine that had nothing to do with exertion. I nodded quickly, adjusting my posture, trying to focus on the task in front of me and not the flutter in my stomach. "This is normal," I told myself. "Friends do this. Straight guys touch each other all the time. It doesn't mean anything. But God, it meant everything to me." Between sets, we joked around like we always did. He threw a towel at me when I teased him about skipping leg day last week. I snapped back with a crack about his protein shake obsession. It was easy. Too easy. Like slipping into an old sweater that still somehow fits perfectly. And yet, there was this undercurrent. A current only I seemed to feel. Every time he leaned in too close, every time our shoulders brushed, every time his eyes lingered a second too long, I felt like I was balancing on the edge of a cliff. I hated how much I wanted more. I hated myself for hoping. We wrapped up the workout about an hour later, both of us sweaty, breathless, and loose from the burn. Nathan ran a towel over his face and looked over at me with that familiar, half-cocky grin. "All right," he said, tossing his towel over his shoulder. "Sauna time?" I hesitated. Not long, just long enough for him to notice. "What?" he asked, still grinning. "You backing out now?" "No," I said quickly, forcing a smirk. "Just catching my breath." He slung his towel over his shoulder and smirked. "You coming or what?" My brain screamed no. My feet followed him anyway. The moment I stepped inside the sauna, the heat hit me like a wave. Thick, heavy, almost suffocating. The wood panels radiated warmth, and the only light came from a soft orange glow above the door, flickering slightly like candlelight behind smoked glass. It smelled faintly of cedar, and something earthy, like warmth itself, had a scent. Nathan stepped in behind me, letting the door thud shut. Instantly, the outside world vanished. No music, no clanging weights, no distractions. Just the sound of our breathing and the distant hum of heat. We sat on the second tier of the bench, side by side, towels wrapped low around our waists. His knee brushed mine slightly as he leaned back against the wood. I tried not to flinch, not to overthink the contact. But I always overthink when it comes to him. "Man," he said, exhaling. "This is exactly what I needed." "Yeah," I murmured. "It's nice." Silence stretched for a beat, then two. He tilted his head back, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with slow, deep breaths. His body glistened, sweat already forming on his neck, collarbones, the sharp line of his abs. I looked away. Too fast, too obvious. "You ever just feel off?" he asked suddenly. I glanced at him. "Off?" "Yeah. Like you're doing all the things you're supposed to. Work, gym, social stuff. But something's missing. Like you're surrounded by people, but still feel kinda alone." I blinked. Nathan wasn't the type to talk like this. Not usually. "Yeah," I said quietly. "I've felt like that." He nodded slowly. "Lately it's been hitting harder. I don't even know why. Everything's fine, technically. But I don't know." He paused, running a hand through his damp hair. "I just feel disconnected." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to reach out and touch his arm, tell him I understood, that I've felt disconnected for years, especially from the people I wanted to connect with the most. But I didn't move. Instead, I said, "You ever talk to anyone about that?" He shrugged. "Not really. Feels weird. Like no one expects me to feel like that, you know? I'm the fun guy. The chill, confident, got it together guy. Can't exactly text my boys and say, 'Hey, I feel kinda empty inside today.'" I let out a small laugh, not because it was funny, but because it was too real. "I get it." He turned his head, looked at me then. Really looked. A drop of sweat slid down his temple. "You seeing anyone right now?" The question caught me off guard. I fumbled for an answer. Not really." "Not really?" he echoed, smiling slightly. "That's vague." I forced a chuckle. "Dating's complicated." He raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" I wiped my hands on my towel, suddenly hyper-aware of every inch of space, or lack of it, between us. "I guess, when you feel something for someone who doesn't feel it back, it makes you not want to try with anyone else." Nathan was quiet for a second. Then he said, "So you've had feelings for someone recently?" It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the wooden slats across the room. Another silence. This one felt heavier, like something was about to break. "You ever had feelings for a friend?" he asked. My heart stopped. I turned to him instinctively, searching his face for a joke, for sarcasm, anything to break the tension. But there was nothing. Just his eyes on me, steady, open, like he'd asked a completely normal question. There was sweat dripping down my spine, but it wasn't from the heat. He was looking at me differently now, like he already knew the answer. I couldn't speak. I opened my mouth, closed it, tried again. Yeah, I said, voice barely above a whisper. He didn't flinch, didn't smirk or tease or back away. He just nodded, like I'd confirmed something he'd already been suspecting. Was it someone you still talk to? He asked gently. I looked down at my hands. My fingers were digging into the towel, gripping it like it was the only thing, keeping me from unraveling completely. Yeah, I said. We talk. A lot. Nathan exhaled slowly. That's gotta be hard. It is. I finally looked up and he was still watching me, his expression unreadable. For the first time, I didn't feel judged. I didn't feel weird. I just felt seen. And that terrified me more than anything. The silence after my confession stretched into something almost unbearable. I could hear the slow drip of sweat rolling off my skin, hitting the wooden bench beneath us. I could hear Nathan breathing, slightly heavier now, but he didn't say anything. Just stared down at the floor between his feet, his elbows resting on his knees, towel slipping slightly on his thigh. I hated myself for saying it. I started, then stopped. My mouth was dry, my heart pounding so hard I could barely think. I didn't mean to make things weird, I said quickly. I know you're straight, I know, and I don't expect anything. I'm sorry if I just ruined. You didn't. His voice cut through the fog in my head, quiet, but firm. I blinked, looking at him. He still wasn't looking at me, but his jaw tightened, and his fingers laced together like he was holding something back. You didn't ruin anything, he said again. I didn't know what to say. I just watched him, frozen in place, unsure if I should breathe or run. Finally, slowly, he turned his head. Met my eyes. I've thought about it too, he said. The words hit me so hard I felt like I couldn't breathe. What? He gave a soft laugh, nervous, disbelieving. I didn't know what to do with it, man. I still don't. I stared at him, completely stunned. Nathan, my straight friend. Nathan, the guy who flirted with waitresses and joked about Tinder dates and was everything I could never be. Saying this, he looked away again, rubbing the back of his neck. I've always said I was straight, and maybe I believed it. I think I did. But lately, I don't know. Things started to feel different. The way I feel when I'm around you. It's not the same as it is with anyone else. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. He kept going, his voice low but steady. You're the only person I actually feel like myself around. Like I don't have to perform or joke or pretend to be cooler or tougher than I really am. You listen to me. You see me. And I think, maybe, part of me's been scared to admit how much I needed that. The room felt too hot, too small. My pulse thundered in my ears. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Part of me wanted to laugh. Out of shock, out of relief, out of the years of holding it all in. Another part wanted to cry. Nathan looked down at the floor again, shaking his head like he was trying to piece it all together as he spoke. I never said anything because, well, it's not exactly something I know how to talk about. And I didn't want to lose you either. I swallowed hard. You're not going to lose me. He glanced up at me, and in that moment, everything shifted. The tension that had been building for years, unspoken, buried deep, hidden behind jokes and casual touches, finally rose to the surface. But it didn't feel dangerous anymore. It felt inevitable. His hand moved first. Slowly, almost cautiously, he reached out and placed it on my leg. Not a brush, not an accidental graze. A steady, intentional touch. My breath caught. His hand stayed there, warm and firm on my thigh. Not like a friend, not like a mistake, but like a choice. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. I looked at him, and he looked back, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not confusion, not fear. Tenderness. He leaned in, just a little. Then paused, forehead hovering inches from mine. I could smell the sweat on his skin, feel the heat radiating between us. But more than that, I could feel the weight of the moment settling between us like gravity. Nothing about this was casual. Then, gently, he pressed his forehead to mine. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it was more than I ever imagined I'd get. We sat like that, foreheads touching, eyes closed, breathing slow and deep, the rest of the world dissolving around us. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Seconds. Minutes. His thumb traced a light path on my leg. Up. Down. Comforting. Grounding. When he finally did speak again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "This is messing with my head," I smiled faintly. "Same. But I don't want to run from it." I opened my eyes and found him already looking at me. "We don't have to label anything," I said. "We don't even have to talk about it right now. My voice faltered. "I just don't want to lose what we have." He nodded slowly, like he was absorbing every word. "You're not going to lose me either," he said. "If anything, I think this might be the most honest I've ever been with anyone." I felt something shift in my chest then. Something uncoil. Something that had been wound too tight for too long. We didn't kiss, not really. But his lips brushed my temple, just once. Light. Meaningful. And it said more than 1,000 words ever could. We didn't speak much after we left the sauna. The locker room was quiet except for the sound of zippers and the shuffle of feet on tile. Nathan didn't look at me when he changed, but he didn't avoid me either. It was a strange limbo, like we were still inside that heated, quiet world, even though we were surrounded by fluorescent lights and cold air. The drive back to his place was just as silent. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel to the beat of a song neither of us were listening to. I stared out the window, watching streetlights flicker past like moments I couldn't hold on to. Questions swirled in my mind, loud and urgent, but none of them made it out of my mouth. What now? Did it mean something? Did he regret it? When we pulled up in front of his apartment, he sat with the engine running for a moment. I reached for the door handle, hesitated. Then he spoke. Softly, barely above the hum of the radio. "Night, man." I turned to him. He was looking at me, his expression unreadable, not cold, just cautious. "Night," I said, forcing a small smile. And then I was out of the car, walking home with too many thoughts and no answers. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the sauna over and over in my head. The things he said, the way he touched me, the look in his eyes when our foreheads pressed together. It all felt so real, so deliberate. But now, with the silence growing heavier by the hour, I began to wonder if I'd imagined it all. If maybe it was heat, emotion, exhaustion, wishful thinking. Maybe in the morning, he'd pretend it didn't happen. Maybe he'd regret it. Maybe we were never going to talk about it again. Then, at 7:14 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Nathan, can we talk?" Just 3 words. But they lifted something in my chest I didn't realize I'd been holding down all night. We met at the little park 2 blocks from his place. It was early, the sky still gray with morning, the grass slick with dew. He was already there when I arrived, sitting on the edge of a bench, hunched forward like he was carrying something heavy. When he looked up and saw me, he gave a tight smile. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Me neither." There was a beat of silence before he continued. "I've been thinking about last night. A lot." I nodded. "Me too." "I don't know what it means," he admitted. "I still feel confused, still trying to make sense of it." "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to have all the answers right now." He let out a breath, like he'd been waiting for permission to not have it all figured out. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. And I don't want to push you away because I'm scared." I sat down next to him. "You don't have to run from it," I said. "We don't have to label it. We don't even have to define it. Right now. But if it felt real to you too, we can just be honest. One step at a time." He looked over at me, eyes soft. It felt real, he said. You feel real. More than anything I've had with anyone else lately. I didn't respond right away. I just let those words settle. The air between us had changed. There was no tension now. Just something deeper. A kind of quiet understanding. We sat in that silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying this alone. Whatever it was, whatever this was, we were in it together now, and that was enough. It's been a few weeks since the sauna. I still think about that night. How one moment of courage cracked open something neither of us were ready for, but both of us needed. Nathan and I haven't labeled anything. We probably won't for a while. But things have changed. Not in the loud, dramatic way I thought they might, but in the quiet, steady way that actually matters. We still hit the gym together, still joke around, still argue about protein powder and which workouts are overrated. But now, there are pauses that mean more. Glances that linger longer. Touches that no longer feel accidental. There's no pretending anymore. Not from me, and not from him either. He talks more now. About how he feels. About what he's confused about. Sometimes he gets frustrated with himself like he's supposed to have all the answers. But I remind him he doesn't. That he's allowed to not know. That I'm not going anywhere. We've built this strange little space between us. A space where he can figure things out without pressure, and where I can finally be without hiding. We don't have a roadmap, but we have trust. And that's a start. Tonight, we're sitting on my couch, a movie playing quietly in the background. It's one of those action flicks Nathan loves. Loud, fast-paced, full of explosions and terrible one-liners. But he's not watching it. Not really. Somewhere. Around the halfway point, without saying a word, he shifts closer to me. Then closer still. And then, gently, like it's the most natural thing in the world, he rests his head on my shoulder. He sighs, deep and content. I don't move. I don't speak. I just sit there, my arm brushing against his, the warmth of him pressed into my side, and I let myself feel all of it. Because this quiet moment in the dark, says more than any confession ever could. He's here. He's trying. And he trusts me enough to lean in, even if he's still figuring out what that means. And me? I'm not holding my breath anymore. I'm not watching my every move or measuring my words. I'm just here, with him. And that's enough. I think back to that day in the sauna, to the sweat, the silence, the touch that started it all. I had no idea what would come next. I still don't. But I know this. Maybe Nathan is still figuring out who he is. Maybe I am too. Maybe we both always will be. But I'd rather be uncertain with him than sure of anything else without him.